Alright, welcome everyone to part 2 of modding my Yamaha MC2404 Mark II mixer. So in the first video, I really sort of had high ambitions on what I was going to do, and I was going to remix that whole project after I completely modded the mixer. And then we could run through the differences like back to back. Things have kind of changed a little bit, and I'll just describe what happened, what I did, and why I sort of changed routes. So to start with, actually I'll pull up all the pictures. So let's go to the other pictures. So to start with, what I was thinking was I would mod a single channel, well, not a single channel, one single unit here, which has 4 channels in it. So I figured I'd mod it by like a type by type. So first I modded, I think it was the, let's pull up the project because I do have actual written stuff. So yeah, so first I modded just the op amps in the channel, and then I modded the caps in the channel, then I modded the caps in the master section, and then I modded all of the op amps in the gain stage of the master section. So I'll run through all the pictures because it's easier to describe and sort of give you guys a sense of what went down. I'll get rid of my little picture. Alright, so here's the channel, the 4 channels that I modded. First you have to kind of take this apart and get all these little knobbies off. So right here you can see you have to pull the knobs off, and you have to unscrew these little what would you call those, nuts, and then I just sort of laid them all out and made sure they all went back to how they came apart. And there you could see I also pulled off the fader pieces. And once you have all that, then all of this stuff can kind of sort of slide out of the metal framing that it's put in. So, and then you have to kind of unplug some of these units from the main sort of electronic plugs, and then it all kind of comes apart. So here's the main section for the channel. Down here is where the faders are. You can't see them. This is some of the buttons. Here's like the pan knobs, I believe. So yeah, once you pull this apart, you can see all the sort of different electronic pieces. And what I was replacing was the op amps and the capacitors. Here's a little bit closer view. You can see there's tons of different things. Here's the caps, and there's I think 8 op amps in here that I replaced. These are the new ones that I was replacing. I think these are the old ones. Let's see if we can zoom in. Yeah, so these ones here were BA4558. I think this is the stock one that comes with the mixer. If not, then someone modded this, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't modded, so this must be the stock one. Here's again the other pictures, a little bit of a close-up. Here's sort of at the front end of the mixer. So at this section here, there's some caps here that I ended up modding. So here you could see the soldering job that I did. These caps were way bigger than the ones that I was replacing, so I had trouble. I had to bend them sort of sideways like this, and then solder them, and then kind of clip them to length. Here you can see the difference. This is what I had to start with, and this is what I was replacing them with. And unfortunately, when I was ordering these here, I didn't really think about size, because I figured just by matching the numbers that they would somehow magically be the same size. But anyways, that's the difference. So this is like the stripping that goes between the channels, I think, for the summing part of it. Everything that runs through the channel then runs through here, and each individual 4-channel unit gets grouped together and then clipped into the master section, and that's where everything gets finalized in the summing process. Here you can see all the different capacitors that I bought, and this is the master section. This one had a lot more capacitors and a lot more op amps to replace. And let's kind of zoom in. 16 volts, 100 micro somethings, I can't remember. So yeah, what I did was I matched the numbers and then ordered it from this place in the US somewhere. Here you can see before and after the replacement. And again, I sort of just clipped these off after everything was put together. This is the top section of the individual 4 channels, and there's 2 more op amps that I replaced, and 4 or 5 capacitors that I replaced. I can't remember. The yellow ones I didn't touch. They were a different voltage and a different micro whatever that was, and that was just a sort of decision that I felt like whatever. I can't even find the piece that I wanted to order that would match this, and I wasn't quite sure what it was for as well. So I replaced 3 different types of op amps. No, one type of op amp and 3 types of capacitors. So you can see there's actually 4 different sizes in this section, and I think I only replaced one of these. It might have been the blue ones. Let's see if I have pictures. Oops, I'm going backwards. Okay, so I don't have pictures of the replacement, but either way, it's 4 different sizes and voltages and whatnot, and I replaced one of them. And here's the master section. This is where the most soldering got done. Here's the op amps. There's 10 of them. I replaced all those, and then these blue ones here, you can see I already replaced these 2 for comparison. I ended up replacing all of these, and that's, you can kind of see where it goes. This sort of just plops onto the back of this thing. There's 4 little like plug things that hold this thing into place. And here, this is the original as well, I believe. No, this is after I replaced it, I think. OP275Gs. Yeah, I think that's the one that I replaced them with. And here you can see the final replaced. Yeah, OP275G is what I replaced them with, and these guys here. And that's how it snaps back in. You plug in all the stuff here, and then you just plop it back into place, screw them back together, and then you're good to go. So hopefully that gives you guys a good rundown. I'm going to make a blog post about this mod, so you'll be able to actually look at everything individually on your own time and read what I've kind of written more in depth about. So this was just a general overview, but now I want to do the audio comparison. So like I said, I started with one section of the channels. I've replaced essentially 4 channels and also the master section, and I broke that down into 4 separate pieces, or 4 separate parts. And all along the way I wanted to document the audio quality, to see if there's any change whatsoever in the audio, either the highs, the lows, the mids, the clarity, the what have you, the dynamics and everything. And I only got so far, and the reason is because I started to realize that the mod wasn't doing anything whatsoever or at least like such a slim difference that it wasn't worth doing that whole process. What was it, like another 8 times or 7 times or something? It was not going to be worth it. So here I wanted to show you guys what I did. So I took a song. It's basically like a deep techno house song that has lots of rolly, rumbly bass, lots of highs, lots of spatial structure to it. And that, to me, would be the best test of if there's any difference by doing this mod. So here's the song here. I'll play it a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll run through all of these different things in comparison. Excuse me. The biggest difference is going from the raw digital audio track running to the raw sort of digital audio track here as it is, compared to going through the mixer at any point. So between all of the different sections or stages of my modification, there was barely no difference. But between the raw track and just running it through the mixer, there's a bigger difference. And I tried to level match everything as best as possible. So here's the song. So this song is perfect because there's tons of low end, lots of high end, and lots of spatial stuff going on. Like I said, if anything happened in the mixer, rolling off the lows, the highs, and all that shit, then I would be able to hear it with this song. And I'm only running it through 2 channels, so I didn't really fully use those 4 channels to get the best sense of what the modification was doing. But I felt like if I have a two track or 2 channel track, it's good enough of a test, and I'd get a decent enough sense of what the modification is doing. So first I'm going to run through this from the beginning as well. I want you to compare all of these different stages. I'm then going to switch on to this track here so you can hear before the mod, just running it through the board raw as it was. Then stage by stage I replaced the op amps. I'll just keep running through this and without me talking, and just kind of running through the whole song, and that way you can hear the difference much clearer all in one sort of take. And I'll just explain real quick. This was the op amps in the channel, then the capacitors, the little round things, in the channel only, and then I replaced the capacitors in the master section. That's the little round things as well, and then the op amps in the master section, those like 8-prong little bit things. So yeah, here we go. Okay, so I think you might get the sense now. And you know what? Even running through the raw audio digital format versus running it through the board before or even after the mod, there's not even that much difference, really. Like, you can hear sort of that analog warmth sort of roll off the top end. Not so much the low end. It's still all quite intact. But like I said, like running through before the mod, first doing the op amp mod in the channel, then adding the cap mod, then adding the cap mod in the master section, then adding the op amp mod. There's a lot of electronic components that I've replaced, like you could see in those pictures, and through all of those different stages and at the very end, I still didn't hear much of a difference whatsoever. And all the work that it took me to do that was not worth it whatsoever. Like, I'm fairly experienced with soldering. I've done like soldering on automobiles. I've done other kinds of electronics soldering, and I've done this one here. And this one was really, really tedious because of how you were working on the board, and all the electronic components are pretty small, and they, from the manufacturer, the soldering job is done like with a freaking I think it was done with a robot, because everything is so like bzz, bzz, like tiny little bit of solder but perfectly placed and whatnot. If not, they have like a special soldering tool. And here I am like trying to do it just sort of manually with this stuff, and it was really, really tedious. And I almost ended up wrecking one of the connections on it as well, like through this whole process. It took me, what was it, at least 3 nights of solid work plus a full Sunday to like make sure everything was right, get everything done. So like, let's say 4 hours times 3 time, so like 12 hours, and then another like 6 hours ish, so like 18 hours to like run through all of that, record, do these tests, all that kind of shit. And it sucked. It wasn't fun. I mean, it was fun in a sense, but it was so tedious that I don't know, I would have liked to have seen this kind of modification comparison beforehand and get a really good sense of like, oh, okay, so I'm spending $120 to $150 on these parts, and I'm spending all this time replacing these parts, and this is the difference that I'm going to be hearing. So needless to say, like I said in the first video, I had the ambition of remixing that entire project and having each channel replaced and modified, and then having that final comparison. And I'm sure doing that way I would hear probably some difference, because you would be running through I can't remember how many channels, but it was like 16 maybe channels of all these different, or 16 different channels that would be modified, and each modification would compound for each additional channel that you add, right? But still, like I made the call because it wasn't sounding much different at all in 2 channels, and all the work that I was putting into it. And then I ended up going back. I undid the modification that I did, and ended up just putting all the original parts back in, resoldering all that back together like it was beforehand. And then I'm just going to keep all those spare parts as maybe backup. I might modify this here. This is the Yamaha 1602 mixer. I might end up trying to modify this thing instead. If not, then I think even I might just try and sell those spare parts online, because many of them I didn't even touch or end up soldering and whatnot. So I can maybe make a little bit of cash back from what I bought. Yeah, so there you have it. In a nutshell, I would not recommend this modification to anybody unless you were doing a full out modification I've heard of some people replacing the all the electronic components, where they're now switching they're changing the voltage that is being sent to each of these channels. That to me sounds like a better modification and would actually make a difference, because you're now putting more voltage in the channel, and then you could change the op amps and all that stuff to a different voltage rating as well. And so in that sense, you would actually be changing the sound, and that would be worth modifying. The other modification that I've heard of is by having direct outs from your preamps. So in the back of that mixer, you have two sets of inputs, I believe. There's like an A and a B for each channel. And what you can do is, where you have the XLR input that goes into the preamp, you also have a line input, which you can modify that to be a line output. So you can have basically a direct out from the preamp, and you can either bypass the EQ or keep the EQ in. So therefore you can use the mixer as a 24 channel preamp line out system, and then record on 24 channel sort of interface, and you would have 24 preamps going directly into your system. Because otherwise when you're going through the mixer, you can only sum down to 2 channels, and that's not as cool for like multi-track recording is probably the best option for everybody nowadays. So anyways, I might end up trying to do that sort of a modification, is the line outs. I might also try and do it on my other mixer here, because I do really like these preamps. When you crank them, they distort really nicely, especially on this 1602, I've noticed. But the 2404, you have a dial that goes from 0 to whatever it is, and it's not by increments like this one here. I'll just quickly show. This one, you only have the increment of +4, -10, -20. In that sense, you're only moving it in increments like this, and it's not as good as having full control of a normal rotary knob or whatever. So anyways, yep, that is my conclusion to my modification. If you guys have done a mod, I know some of you have replied to my other video and said that you did a mod. Maybe just give a few comments about your experience, because I know if my parts were worn down and then I replaced it and did a mod, but basically just a replacement, I'm sure I would have heard a difference, and then it would have been worth doing that whole thing. So yeah, that's my experience. Please let me know if you have the same experience or something different, by modifying or replacing parts in this exact mixer or any other kind of similar vintage, maybe Yamaha mixer or even a different brand. Let me know of your experience. Leave a comment below, and it'll be interesting to sort of spread this information out to the internet world. So anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video, and bye bye.